Back on draft coverage here on HQ, where it's green like money. The Ravens shoring up edges with the Marshall product. Mike Green at pick 59. Big value and a big win in B-More. Back with the guys. Mike Renner joining the conversation as well. Fellas, we're looking at big winners on day 2, but also across days 1 and 2 of the NFL draft. And it's hard to look away from Baltimore right now, Mike.
It really is. Their first-round pick, Malachi Starks, feels like, you know, when Tyler Linderbaum fell to them at the back end of the first round. It's just like, this is a darn good player. Maybe it's not a value position, but he's not going to be a bust in the NFL. You watch his tape from his freshman year at Georgia to his sophomore to his junior, and it's like he has all the things you want to be a modern, do-it-all safety in the NFL. He can cover man-on-man in the slot. He can range from deep and get over the top of balls. And he could just go in the box. Maybe he's not a guy who take on blocks, but he's a good tackler in the box. So not a lot this guy can't do. And then getting Mike Green, the big faller in this first round, in the second at pick 59. He was 10th overall on my board. The guy knows how to rush the passer. Those two picks back-to-back, just home runs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the Ravens doing Ravens things. You were talking about that last segment, Rand. And I mentioned Odafe Oweh, his contract's up at 25. David Ajabo, his contract's up. So this is a natural progression of what comes next, and it feels like the evolution of the edge rush position and what Mike Green was able to do at Marshall. And the other pick they got in the third round, they finally went offense. Emory Jones Jr., the right tackle out of LSU, who probably kicks inside to guard. They have Daniel Faalele playing the right side at guard, and it feels like he could be a potential starter, if not right away, but maybe a month or two into the season. And that's the guy you're going to have for 4, 5, 6 years if he plays like you can expect him to play. Not quite a right tackle in the NFL, but I think a guard guy who can move inside and be incredibly effective.
Rand, take me into the room, because luck is one thing, timing is another. How does preparation lead to those two things?
I mean, it's key, right? So as you're sitting there in the draft room and you're monitoring your board, you also have a board that's in view of team needs. And so you're understanding where other teams may go and the players that may fall to you. And so touching on this, everyone up here knows how much I love Malachi Starks. So I'll leave that alone. I want to take him on as one of my sons. And then you add in Mike Green, who we've talked about, and how I feel about him and his ability to rush. But then Emory Jones. And I know Ryan feels like he can kick inside, and I do believe that, but I'm not so sure that he can't play right tackle. And we're talking about a guy that was the tone setter at LSU. When you talk to the folks at LSU, everyone respected Will Campbell over there on the left side, but they knew Emory Jones was the one that you did not want to mess with. And so there were things that would go on, the little fights that you would have in practice, and usually Emory Jones was the guy that ended those things.
Yeah.
And does that not sound like a Baltimore Ravens?
Certainly does. Good boards there in Baltimore. We'll leave it at that as we move our conversation on to another winner. And Ryan, I know you liked what Atlanta's done over these first 2 days, because we were trying to figure out who stepped in it, in the mud in day 1, and that trade, giving up first-round compensation next year, it made some people scratch heads, but it's also a very clear direction that Atlanta's trying to strike here.
And they've tried for years to figure out the edge rush position, and you can certainly have a conversation about that first-round pick they had to give up in 2026 in order to come back into the first round to get James Pierce Jr. And if this works out like they hope it does, it's the same conversation it feels like we were having with the Houston Texans 2 years ago when they took C.J. Stroud and then traded up to number 3 for Will Anderson Jr. and gave up a ton. No one has since talked about it because it's worked out perfectly. And the other reason, and I know Mike had some concerns about that first-round pick, but now he's on board because they took your guy Xavier Watts in the third round, and he could have gone 10, 20, even 30 picks higher. So now they got help in the secondary. They got 2 edge rushers that are going to be there and get after it from day 1. I think this is a great development, given Raheem Morris, him wanting to get after the quarterback.
All I would tell you, and I'll keep it brief, all you have to do is go look at the smile Raheem Morris had after they took Xavier Watts. Raheem is a fiery guy, but that look that he had on his face was pure excitement because, like we said, he went and got the 2 pass rushes early, and then to get an Xavier Watts in the third round. You talk about what they're trying to build down there in Atlanta, they're well on their way.
He had 13 picks, Xavier Watts did, the past 2 years. And he started his career at Notre Dame as a wide receiver. The guy did not play defense in high school. So for him to be this instinctive, this early on to the position, and now he goes next to Jesse Bates. Are you kidding me? Who's going to want to throw over the middle of the field against that defense?
I like ball skills on the defensive side of the ball. Got to catch that pill when you have an opportunity to do so. He's certainly capable of doing that. We've in years past had a clear and obvious butt end of the joke. Oftentimes it's the draft strategy at the center of the star, but Dallas earning some accolades here from this desk. Mike, what have you liked about Dallas's first 2 days?
It's tone-setting draft. I mean, it started right off the top there. That Tyler Booker pick. I mean, he is going to be a difference maker for that offensive line. You go from Zach Martin, one Hall of Famer, and I'm not putting Hall of Fame on Tyler Booker, but I'm putting this tackle duo of Tyler Smith and Tyler Booker, within the next 3 years, they will be the best guard duo in the NFL. I fully believe that, and he is a guy that's going to bring it every single day. He is a heartbeat of an offensive line sort of player. And then followed up with Donovan Ezaraku in the second, Boston College edge rusher, a guy who a lot of people would have been okay with. Like, you wouldn't have been crazy if they went with him at 12, and he falls all the way to you in the second round. One of the best pure pass rushers in this draft class. Maybe going to give up some issues in the running game, maybe a little bit lighter in the frame, but I think he can develop because he has these long arms that he uses at his disposal. So for Dallas Cowboys team that's had some ho-hum drafts of late, this one looks like a big turnaround from that.
Yeah, I don't know what my 2026 mock draft is going to look like, but the person the Cowboys are taking.
We will be asking you soon, just so you know. That's
well, I can tell you this.
Tomorrow's homework.
The Cowboys' first-round pick will be named Tyler. That far we
that we know.
Way. Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind, and Tyler made this point in comments after he was drafted, that his job, he felt like, was to make the person across from him want to quit football. And that's the approach he takes, and I love that mindset. And there were some conversations about what his best scheme fit is. I think that makes sense in Dallas. I don't care about the 5-3-5 that he ran. Mike talked about Donovan Ezaraku. Is he going to be good enough against the run? I think he'll get better. I thought he got better over the course of the season. Then finally, they got Subon Rebel at the end of the third round. ACL last September. He has first-round talent. It's just a matter of him not playing a lot of football last year. This feels like a steal when you have Deron Bland, you have Teron Diggs coming off the injury.
Yeah.
So those three picks, I don't know if they could have gone much better.
For me, it's no surprise. And I'll say it this way. Dallas has traditionally drafted well here in recent years. And kudos to Will McClay and his staff and those guys being able to identify what these coaches want. But this has never been their issue. The issue hadn't been the draft. It's been re-signing these players and signing free agents. So they continue to nail the draft, and now we'll see 3 to 4 years if they're able to maintain these guys and keep these guys long term.
I don't want to rain on the parade. The other issue has been January football. They've made some suspect decisions. If Rand doesn't want to say it, I'm okay saying it.
There's other issues at hand, but again, checking the box here on draft day in days 1 and 2 at least. Work still to be done in day 3. We'll get there, but I want to talk about player-specific setup for success because there are teams that walk away feeling like winners. And there's some players that are going to places where they can succeed right away. Who's a player that comes to mind for you, Rand?
For me is Travion Henderson going to New England in a Josh McDaniels system. He's going to fill that Kevin Falk role. He's going to team up with Ramondre Stevens and give them a change of pace third down back. We're talking about a guy that is explosive. He is a slasher, and he is a really good player out of the backfield catching the ball. And he was probably the best pass protecting back in this class. And that is something that isn't taught a lot in college football. Usually these young guys use third down as their down off, the guys that have been primary ball carriers. But this guy takes pride in blocking, and you see it, and he's going to be an awesome fit in that New England offense.
You know who else takes pride in blocking? Jack Besh. Second-round pick.
There you go.
Las Vegas Raider. My guy Rand's laughing at me. We don't know how fast Jack Besh is because he didn't run a time. He doesn't play particularly fast. That's not his job. He plays in the slot. He's a big slot, big catch radius. He's a long strider. And there are no people, no disrespect to Trey Turner and Jacoby Myers. They are good wide receivers. They need someone else not named Brock Bowers to help out Eugene Silver-Smith III. And they also drafted Ashton Jeanty. This feels completely different than what we're typically seeing from Raiders drafts in recent years. So I love the idea of Jack Besh there. I loved him at the Senior Bowl. I loved his tape at TCU before that. I think he has an opportunity to make some noise.
I'm going to go with another Patriot. I'm going to go with Travion's teammate they got in the third round, Kyle Williams, the Washington State wide receiver. I love this guy's tape. For my money, he's the best separator in the draft class, outside of obviously Travis Hunter, who went very highly. But his ability to just make guys miss at the line of scrimmage, to shake guys at the top of his routes, I don't see a guy on this Patriots roster right now that's a better wide receiver. I think at this point in his career, Stephon Diggs is not that guy. Kyle Williams, I think, can be a high-end route runner, and he gets to learn from one of the best.
I want to make a dollar bet with Mike. More production at the end of the year. My guy Jack Besh, your guy Kyle Williams.
Wow.
I'll go Kyle Williams.
Okay, let's see.
Strike it into the record.
100 pennies on the line, Musso.
Target share will certainly be on your side there with the Patriots still looking for some answers
very true there.
on the outs. There is a dam forming at the confluence of rivers. His name, Aaron Rodgers. Pittsburgh yet to address quarterback with uncertainty remaining in the form of the 41-year-old four-time MVP. Back in studio with the guys as we see some Jets tape there, but we're thinking Pittsburgh Steelers, and we're thinking Still no quarterback.
Yep.
We obviously draw a line there to Rodgers. We have them tabbed as one of our losers through 2 days. Why, Ryan?
They don't have a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is still a free agent as we sit here. Mason Rudolph, no disrespect. Skylar Thompson, no disrespect. They took Derek Harmon in the first round, the defensive lineman. They made it clear after that pick that that's exactly what they needed to do in terms of bolstering that part of the defensive line room. Cam Hayward is in his mid-30s. You like Derek Harmon. I liked him, but I was concerned about some of the injuries that we heard some other teams talk about. Then in round 3, because they didn't have a second-round pick because of that DK Metcalf trade, they went with Caleb Johnson, the long, tall corner. He's not long. 6'2", 220, sort of zone scheme in Iowa, and that certainly translates to what Arthur Smith wants to do. But he ran a 4.57, and I felt like there were better options there, quarterback or otherwise. So I don't love this draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if they're measurably better today than they were 48 hours ago, and they still do not have a quarterback.
Go ahead.
And I'm sorry, and I feel the same way. I feel like not addressing this quarterback position, and I'm thinking about the future, right? We can go ahead and pencil in Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback because you have to give them credit. Pittsburgh knows what's going to happen at that quarterback position, which is why they haven't addressed it here. But again, we're looking at 2026 and your QB1 is not under contract and you don't know where you're going to fall in next year's draft to be able to address that position for the future. So you still have not secured your future at that position, which has been a long-term question since the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, they are putting a lot of eggs in one basket case, but it wasn't the draft to get the quarterback, right? It just was not. Unfortunately, at 21, they weren't going to go up and get the guy. So I like what they did with Derek Harmon. He feels like a Steelers defensive lineman. I get the injury concerns, but they need a transition plan from Cam Hayward because he can't play forever. He looks like he can.
Yeah.
The guy was still electric last year, but he can't play forever. The Caleb Johnson pick, though, I do question a little bit. I'm with you there, Ryan, because you're drafting a guy who's a scheme fit for Arthur Smith's offense. And yeah, that's who your OC is now. But given the track record of Steelers OCs, how long is that going to be your OC? Is he going to last the entire contract of Caleb Johnson here? Yeah. So to get him at 83 here when there was a lot of backs in this class, you could have waited, and I thought there were still a lot of good players on the board that could help the Steelers team. I agree. That pick I was a little on.
Rand, let me ask you this. As a running back, when we say these guys are fits for zone or gap schemes, shouldn't you be able to transcend that, whether you're a third-round pick or a seventh-round pick? Does that really matter, or maybe it depends?
No, it should. Any naturally good runner could fit in most schemes, right? But, and I won't say who, but there's a prominent back in our league that is playing in a system that's not comfortable for him. And he prefers another way. But to show you the brilliance of that offensive coordinator that's calling the play, he's adjusted and given him some runs that he's more comfortable in. But he still continues to be very productive in a way that you wouldn't even know who he was. And so the really good ones, they fit anywhere. But then you just have guys who are just limited in what they can do in certain schemes, and so they have to make them scheme specific.
On the quarterback note, it is a league of haves and have-nots. If you have one, you have a chance. If you do not, you do not. And we don't have an answer yet on Aaron Rodgers. I also find it interesting what the discourse inside that room is like right now. I don't know if everybody's rowing on that river in the same direction with the short and long-term intentions at the quarterback position. Let's keep it moving here. We're going to put the Bengals under the microscope. And Rand, this was a big meal for this front office this whole offseason. You got to ink your wide receivers. You get that done. You have an edge who wants a deal. You have another defensive lineman that retires. And now you take to the draft and maybe you missed the mark in addressing some of those needs.
Yeah, and so you start, and you understand that when you allocate all your resources in terms of money on offense, then you're going to have to go younger on the opposite side of the ball because you can't afford to pay everybody, which is where Trey Hendrickson is finding himself now. And so you go Shamar Stewart yesterday, who is physically gifted, but that does not equal production, right? So there's a question mark there. And then you go with Demetrius Knight, who is potentially your Mike linebacker moving forward, but you still have Jermaine Pratt in that role, who's probably expected to be a free agent after the season. So how is he going to get on the field? And then you follow it up with Dylan Fairchild in the third, who will have a chance to break into that lineup. So you're really drafting 3 guys right now who are probably in a competition to start and not guys that are walking into clear-cut roles.
Yeah, I do just think that this felt like we have these needs, we have to go fill them. We're going to kind of eschew the fact that there are other good players out there and just plug the top player on our board because those weren't value picks.
Yeah.
You know, where they got guys, there were other people that Yeah, I just objectively should have been higher on your board if you could go for any position in the NFL. And I look at this Bengals roster, and like outside of wide receiver and quarterback, they really did have every position open to them, in my opinion. There aren't a lot of positions that are set on this roster, but it just seemed like they locked in on edge, linebacker, and guard. And that's why you get a guy like Dylan Fairchild, who I think can be good, but I don't think he's the immediate upgrade for you. He's only started for a year and a half for Georgia. I don't think he's day one plug and play. So for all those reasons, like, I don't think next year on this roster, any of these guys are making an impact, unfortunately.
Yeah, Randy and I talked about this. I'll ask you this, Mike, because I'm curious what you think. It feels like Shamar Stewart is a version of what they were hoping for in Miles Murphy, who didn't work out. And if it didn't work out, and I get, like, if you don't want James Pierce Jr. or Mike Green because of the red flags, even though historically Cincinnati has had some leeway there, fair enough, but it feels like it's a big ask for Shamar not to be Miles Murphy.
Well, we talk about Shamar like he's this utter freak, and truly he is, but just go back and look at Miles Murphy's numbers. They are almost identical outside of the vertical that Shamar has him in, but like he ran in the 4.5s at about the same weight. Like Miles Murphy was a freak. But that's the kind of cautionary tale, is that you watch him try to track down Lamar Jackson last year, and it was like a chicken with his head cut off. It was just child's play for Lamar outside the pocket. That's why Baltimore won both those games last year. So, yeah, I do worry about that. You're drafting the same player. Now, could he develop into a guy? Sure. That's what the edge position is in the NFL. It's the most athletically driven and physically driven position on a football field, but we just haven't seen it from him.
How about those wideouts? Cincinnati going to score some points. We'll see if they show up for the first month of the season. That has also been a problem for Cincinnati. Going to set it back around the horn here for a big reach. A player that got their name called, and you maybe had them graded around a day, a couple hours prior to when they would go.
Yeah, Illinois' Pat Bryant, incredibly productive in college. He ran a 4.61, and he didn't play particularly fast. I think he's a possession receiver. I thought he plays well in terms of settling inside zones, and maybe that's what Sean Payton thinks he will do for Bo Nix. But I felt like in the third round was a little high. They have Devon Vele, who they drafted last year in the 7th round. Great production there. They have Cortland Sutton and obviously Marvin Mims, Evan Ingram. They have a ton of weapons. I just felt like with some of the other more athletic, faster wide receivers on the roster and available in the draft, if they had wanted to go that direction, that made a little bit more sense for me. But I will give Sean Payton the benefit of the doubt. It was just a surprise for me in the moment.
Well, for me, and I'm glad we have this distance between Mike and I don't want him to reach across and get me, because I'm going to say his guy here, and that's quarterback Dylan Gabriel to the Browns in the bottom of 3. And again, this is no knock to him, and they addressed the quarterback position. Fine, I have no issue with that. However, Dylan Gabriel is coming into Cleveland to be a backup. And so you're taking a backup in 3. Could you have gotten that in 4? Could you have gotten that in 5? And then been able to add other talented players to the roster that will fill a more immediate hole than drafting a backup quarterback?
I'll see if I can get through my guy after that. But I'm going to go with...
Do you think Dylan Gabriel has a chance to start next year?
I think he will start. I think he will start for them.
How soon?
Maybe not week 1, but at some point.
Okay.
We can bet. We can have a bet.
Another dollar bet?
Dollar bet?
I will go with TJ Sanders, though, the South Carolina defensive tackle, pick 41 to the Buffalo Bills. And not only pick 41, they traded up to go get him pick 41. I just worry about this because he, when watching his tape, is very much a 3-tech only type of guy. He is not a nose tackle. If you put him at the nose tackle, you're going to have problems. Ed Oliver is the same way. You have kind of redundancy there on the interior, and Ed Oliver ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So, yeah, that'll help you on third downs a little bit. But I didn't think you needed to trade up for him, and I thought with this roster there may have been other needs, and especially run defending needs on the interior, which is where they're probably weakest at this moment in time. He ain't helping that.
The beauty in this game, they are all just future prognostications, and markets have a way of moving. We'll see what they all look like at the next level. We'll also see plenty of names called on day 3, and that's where we head next. Coming up, rosters get built and opportunity knocks. Our guys offering a few of their favorites with depth selections set for Saturday. More HQ coming after a quick timeout.